Are you ready for that? Kind of, sort of? Kind of, sort of? You may turn the lights on if you want, it doesn't matter. But anyway, I believe this is going to be coming, and maybe sooner than we are ready for, that this may happen. Now, I shared up in my Melo there about a month ago, and we were talking about the power grid a little bit. There was a man there, none of our faith, that came forward, and he said that his job, I'm not sure he said he has retired from that, but that was his job. He worked where he switched high voltage. They have men 24/7 sitting in offices watching the grid power throughout America. When they see a system overloaded, they quickly switch and do some moving around, bring power in from here or from here to keep it balanced so it does not overload the system. That's their job. He said there are 3 major transformers in America that keep the power running. Only 3. That's what he said. He said if any one of them were to go down and they can't catch it quick enough, it'll bring the others down with them. They got to shut off the area where that one takes care of to keep the others running. And the worst part of it is, if one were to go down, they would be able to switch it at maybe a third of America, wherever that might be. They might be able to put a partial load on, more loads on the others, but they probably won't be able to handle everything. But he said the problem it is, those are not made in America. There's none stockpiled in America. They're made overseas. And he said, we know that if one of those was to go down, it would take at least 6 months by the time we could have another one here. Now, does that sound pretty fragile for our electric system? Yes, it does. Now, all they need to do is have an EMP hit one of those stations. I'll take it out. Don't you think the Chinese and them people know where they're at? Oh, yeah. Yes, they do. Right now, America and China are squabbling. We could be out of power very quickly. And we may have some time, we don't know. And I'm not putting time out there because I don't know. I'm not prophesying any length of time. It could be tomorrow. I don't think it's going to be tomorrow. I honestly don't. But it could be. So what are you going to do? The power had just gone on. You saw the lights went out. What would you do if that light would not come on again for a long time? Maybe 6 months till they finally bring another transformer in to take the place of that. What would you do during this time? What if the power goes off in America? I want you to think about this deeply. What if the power goes off in America and it's off for 9 months, 12 months, whatever, 5 months, and they get it back, and by this time they're pointing the fingers to the commandment keepers. And they turn the power back on, and all you need to do is surrender your faith. You can have power too. What are you going to do? Are you going to give up your faith? By the God's grace, we will not. Now, like I said, a month ago, I had a class up there close by Melo. What's the little town's name? Was it Orient? Curlew. Was it Curlew? Community center there. My wife was scheduled to go along as she is here today. It was probably the best thing that could have happened for my wife and I to realize something. Either Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, my wife got bit by a spider. We're pretty sure that's what it was. All the symptoms pointed that way. We believe it was the black widow. She got bit on her neck. We did not see the bite mark. It's pretty low, so we didn't see it. Her ears started swelling. Friday morning, she was up and going like normal, but by mid-morning, she says, I'm itchy. I'm sore to the touch, she said. By noon or something like that, we noticed her ears swelling up. The top of her lobe was really swelling up. It was puffed up big, about double the size. What's going on? We tried to figure out what's going on. We didn't do much. We put some things on in the evening. essential oils on, rubbed it into there, and went to bed. Next morning we got up, she says, I don't feel like going to church, I'm not going to church. And much, much worse. She had, by then, she didn't eat anything Friday, I think it was Wednesday afternoon. We drank a lot of water, we gave her electrolytes and things like that, kept her hydrated, and gave her a couple smoothies, but she just didn't eat. She lost control of her bladder. There was another thing that she had a problem with. What was that? But anyway, it affected her nervous system, which that is what the Black Widow does. We then, by 7th evening, realized this is a problem. She is getting really sick. She didn't realize how sick she was. Her face was all swollen. This eye was swollen shut. She couldn't even see out of it anymore. She could pull it down, but, and then it started moving. Moved over to this side. She lay on one side of the bed, it moved around as she lay. And we had a friend that came in and jumped on it. She put on clay poultices, charcoal poultices, castor oil pulls. We pulled her liver cleanse, and we really, really hit it hard. And she stayed down until about Wednesday. She started getting up a little bit and started moving around, and she didn't feel like doing anything. She just, almost like she didn't want to do anything. She knew she had to, so we worked with her. We gave her hot cold foot baths and fomentations on her and just everything we could. But this is what I want to tell you guys. A lot of us know how to deal with natural remedies. We have an understanding, at least in partial knowledge, of using herbs and things. Charcoal, clay, castor oil packs and things like that. But how many of us have it on hand? When something happens, where do we go? The health food store, right? Are you prepared for when you can't go to the health food store and get things? That was a wake-up call for me. We need to have those things ready. We need to have them on hand. Because if you don't, we might be in trouble. We might know exactly how to deal with something, but and yes, you can also use dirt or clay from the earth, which is very beneficial. But there was a movie that they made a number of years ago, which I saw, and it was very interesting. It came from China, and it hit California, and it went throughout the United States, and it killed off a very large percentage of the population. This family managed to escape out of California, ended up in Idaho, somewhere in Idaho. This man, they went through all these trials and everything. This man ended up getting a sliver. It got infected. And all they knew was antibiotics and that. They weren't trained on how to use natural remedies and so forth. This man literally died from an infection from a sliver. How many of you know how to deal with a sliver? Just get a little sliver in your hand or whatever and it gets infected. What would you do? Do you know? Do you know how to treat something like that? Or are you just going to die? Brothers and sisters, we need to know. There are so many natural remedies and things out there. We'll just take care of that so easy. But do you know how? We need to know. So that was a wake-up call to me. We might know how to survive without power and all that, but what if somebody gets sick? I don't know how many of you know, but almost 95% of all meds that you get over the counter or doctor prescribed, where do they come from? China. Or India. But the largest percent comes from China. What if China says, we're going to teach you a lesson. We're going to cut off all your medications. What are you going to do? Do you know how to eat vegetables and herbs and things that will help you along with your diabetes, your blood pressure, or whatever you have? Or your neighbors that are not eating as healthy as maybe we are. We are told that medical missionary work is going to be the last part of the gospel. That'll be the finishing part of the gospel. What if this power goes off and all of a sudden our neighbors can't get their medication? What if we knew how to help them? It might be the entering wedge for the very last final work that we can do. Go to their houses. Work with them. We need to understand. We need to know how. Here's the Bible verse. The sword is without, pestilence in the family within. He that is in the field shall die of the sword. He that is in the city, famine and pestilence shall devour him. But they that escape of them shall escape, and shall be on the mountains like doves of the valleys. Sounds like the mountains would be the better place to be. Of course, all of them will be mourning for their iniquities that they have done. I think I'm just going to go over some of these. The trade unions and confederacies of the world are a snare. Keep out of them and away from them, brethren. Have nothing to do with them. Because of these unions and confederacies, it will soon be very difficult for our institutions to carry the work in the cities. My warning is to keep out of the cities. And if you want to read the rest, you can. I'm going to go down where it says, where it's underlined. But ere long there will be such strife and confusion in the cities that those who wish to leave them, what's going to happen? They will not be able to leave the cities. We must be preparing for these issues. This is a light that is given me. This was written in 1903, in April, 120 years ago, about right now. Actually, it's just a little over 120 years that this was penned. This is what I want people to really focus on. It says, privation may be their lot. Those are the people that go from the city to the country. Of every soul who now believes and obeys the truth. Christ has told us that we will have reproach. If persecution for the truth's sake is to come, it is important that every line of work become familiar to us. What? Every line of work. What does that entail? What does that mean? Do you know how to camp? Do you know how to garden? Do you know how to build a structure? Something to keep you warm? Do you know how to use a wood stove? You go down the list. Every line of work. It is important that every line of work become familiar to us. Right now, when we have a need, what do? We want to build a cabin or something, where do we go? Oh, over there, this person, that person. We're not familiar with all the every line of work. That we and our families may not suffer through this lack of knowledge. We can and should have tact and knowledge in trades, in building, in planting, and in sowing. We need definitely to have tact and knowledge in trades, how to trade and things like that. In building, in planting, and sowing. I would want to hope that every single one of you knows how to plant and sow. A knowledge of how to cultivate the land will make rough places much smoother. This knowledge will be counted a great blessing even to our enemies, if we have the knowledge of that. If the poor now crowded into the cities could find homes upon the land, they might not only learn a livelihood, but find health and happiness now unknown to them. To hard work, brothers and sisters, if you haven't experienced country living yet, I'll tell you what, hard work is going to be the lot. It's not like you come from having an 8-hour job, and you come home, you go into your home, pot noodle, whatever food you have in the microwave or whatever. You come home from work, guess what? Your farm, your country home, well, you may change your clothes, but guess what? You're out there either in the garden, or you're cutting firewood, or you're doing whatever. You're not just sitting down watching the football game or whatever's going on at the time. You don't have time for that. One of our brethren that came from Florida has often shared how he and his wife, they thought they were busy. In Florida, they both, and his wife, she worked in the hospital, he worked at a mechanic shop, and they moved up here from Florida. They found out that the job at the city is what they needed to bring in some income, but they found out that's not going to take care of their gardens, it's not going to plant trees, it's not going to cut firewood, it's not going to do the things that need to be done in the home. So by the time it was rough, it was hard for them, but eventually they realized that they didn't have time to turn on the TV anymore. By the time they got home, went out and did the work that had to be done around the house, outside work, they were tired enough to go to bed. By the time they had showers and a little something to eat, it was time to go to bed. But it says privation, hardship and privation. Privation, many times you might not have plenty of money because you're trying to make money to make payments on the property maybe, or you make money to live off, your gas and everything. And then also you got to buy things, fence, fruit trees, whatever you're doing. It's just, you got to watch your pennies. Would be there a lot. But what a blessing would be theirs in leaving the city with its enticements to evil, its turmoil and crime, misery and foulness for the country's quiet and peace and purity. I have never lived in a city, and I, by God's grace, will never live in a city. But I have, with us cooking for camping things, we have, from time to time, spent a few nights in the city. There's no better place than coming home, away from that noise and turmoil. So my question is, what are the most important things to have on hand? Personally, water, I believe, is the most important. If you don't have a well or some source of water, water is absolutely essential. Without water, you will only live about 3 to 4 days. With water, you can live for a couple of weeks without food. Yes, you're going to be very hungry. You're going to feel the pain in the empty stomach and so forth. Then, of course, this time of year is not as bad, but in the winter, like in this area, without some sort of outside heat or other heat than your body heat, you're going to be in big trouble. So we need warmth. We also need clothing, blankets, whatever, a good wool blanket or whatever would be very, very good. And some source of light, especially in the winter when it's dark long. How will you stay warm and cook your food? Some might say, then I'll go get a stove. Power's off, you know. The stores are closed, there's nothing in them anymore. But you think that, well, once this goes down, I'll go get my stove. Is that going to work? No. Once this goes down, if the power went out, just like the switch went off and went off to stay off, how long would you have an opportunity to get a wood stove?
2 or 3 days?
At the most. 2 or 3 days at the most. Where would you even get the stove? What about wood? Do you have wood? Oh, does your house have a chimney in it? Where are you going to use your wood stove? It doesn't have a chimney. Where are you going to put that stove? Why would a good stove do good in here? I don't see a chimney in here. So if your house doesn't have a chimney, a wood stove will do you absolutely no good. Well, you might say, I got a propane stove. We have one of those alongside our wood stove. My wife likes it because she doesn't have to heat up the big old wood stove. But how long will that last? It all depends on how much propane you have. So, what about one of those? How many of you have a wood cook stove? Good, at least we got a few in here. Brothers and sisters, I was up in Curlew, like I said, a month ago. There was about 11 of us, about 30 others. When I asked that question, I think all 30 hands went up, but not all of ours went up. Now, those of you who might have a wood cook stove, have you ever used it to cook on? I know some of you have, and I'm very happy for that. This is what my wife and I grew up with. That's all we knew until a few years ago. That's all we knew. All our food was cooked on the stove. Now, do you even know how it works? Some of you do, but many of you don't. There's a variety of different cook stoves out there. My wife has a kitchen queen. It's similar to this. This is not a kitchen queen, but it's very similar to this. I just pulled a picture off from online. Now, a number of years ago, We had people move from New York City out here. And they had just a stove like that, just to heat the house. You can cook on this too, you just can't bake with it. Anyway, it was in the fall, the stove was set up, they were in a trailer on the property. And they decided to, it was chilly, they decided to start a fire. I'm sure we had ours going too, probably. I don't remember. But anyway, she sends her son over to us, and she asks, sends a note with her son, there's something wrong with the stove, I can't start it. Could you help? Because there's got to be something wrong with it. So I went over, I looked into that stove. Those of you who know how to light a stove will probably laugh at this. But those of you who don't know, have never lit a wood stove, maybe don't understand what I'm talking about for the moment. I'll have to explain it. I opened that door, it wasn't a glass door, so I opened the door, I looked in there. There was one log this big laying in the wood stove. I burned up all my cardboard, all my paper, and I can't get this thing to light. Now, it's funny, isn't it? But yet it isn't. If you have that wood stove and you're trying to light that stove and don't know how, you have exhausted everything that you have and that stove will not light. It's not funny.
No.
I have asked permission from this individual just recently, several months ago, because I have been using, I'm not going to use the name, because some of you might know the individual, so I don't use the name. But I asked this individual, I shared it, and that individual sat in the room. I went to the individual later and asked, is it okay if I use that? And the individual said, yes, use it, because people need to know. So, this was the interesting part. I got over there, and there was this one log in there about, so I looked at it and said, okay, do we have a little kindling outside somewhere? Oh, yeah, we went out, got some small sticks and stuff. Sorry. Oh, well, I was a pathfinder, and that's the way we started our campfires. A little TP, and then, then put bigger pieces on it. Brothers and sisters, I'm not criticizing or anything, it's just people don't know. She knew how to start a campfire, but she wouldn't know how to start a stove. It's the same principle. Very same principle. From that day on, never needed help anymore, the stove worked after that. But it's just the idea, you don't know how if you don't know how. And then this one here, so where's the hottest part on this stove? Right directly above the fire. That's the hottest part of that stove. You have your kettle on there, on the left end of that stove. It comes to a boil. Well, it doesn't have knobs like that one. You can quickly turn the flame down. What do? Move it over. Good. We got some good people here that have experience. Very glad to hear that. Yes. That may be boiling hot on the left. To the very far right, you might be able to stand your hand on it. It could be that cool. So you adjust the pot or whatever you got on there to the desired temperature because you are unable to turn it down. This is a piece of metal. It took you 20 minutes to get it hot. Guess how long it's going to take it to cool down? Maybe even longer than 20 minutes. So now you got this hot item. You can't just shut the draft down. Yes, you can shut it down, but it'll take time for that metal to cool down. So those are things that you need to know. You're going to have problems. You'll probably figure it out. It might be trial and error. Then the oven, on the other hand here, opens up. There's a needle there that tells you how hot it is. Now this stove, the knob there in the center is the oven. You turn it to the desired temperature, you walk away, beep, you put your food in, you walk away. It doesn't work that way with this stove. You watch that needle, it comes up to 350, that's where you want it. You quickly shut down the draft or partially shut it down. You put your bread in or whatever you're baking. You keep an eye on that needle. You maybe shut the stove down too much. Or maybe it's still heating up, maybe you didn't shut it down enough. If you're not careful, you can have burnt whatever's in there. It's really easy to burn. Depending on how hot it is, you gotta open that door just a little crack, and that's how the heat escapes till the temperature drops. So it is trial and error getting to know your stove. You want to do that once the power is down and everything's out, or do you want to? Shouldn't it be wise to have it already now, practicing a little? I would think so. But anyway, one thing I can't forget, I tend to do, almost by the grace of God, I've never forgotten it. Sometimes I had to come back. Now, that's going to be for all stoves. I'm going to go on a little further than that. This stove here is what I would recommend, something like that for a heating stove if you can't get a wood stove like this. Now, I just want to tell you, there is, I don't know how many of you know Stoves and More. That's one of our brethren. He's down in North Carolina. I personally know him, talked to him a number of times. I talked to him last November. He said if you any of these stoves, you want to get one of these stoves, right back in November, he said if you order it, you're going to wait a year. The order is so far out. So I hope you have it, or I hope you have it ordered if you want one, or then you can go with something like this. You can cook on these. You can boil and cook on these. You can fry on these. You just have, unless you get a Dutch oven, you can bake on it with a Dutch oven on top of that. So I would recommend that stove over this stove. This is also a good source of heat, but see, you don't have very much of a flat spot. I would recommend if you get a wood stove, get one with a nice flat top. That's why I show both stoves. Get one with a nice flat spot where you got much room to heat. This you can also heat, but you're limited. You got three spaces about this wide. So you're very limited on how big a pot or something you can put on. Yes, and so there's different things. So now how many of you know that wood creates ashes? All of you should know that. So when this stove gets full of ashes, you've got to take it out. It doesn't burn as well once it's full of ashes. So what do you do with the ashes? You just get a cardboard box and you just scoop them in there, leave them sitting aside? No, you never do that. I would recommend, if you have a wood stove and nobody has taught you yet, get a metal bucket. Get a metal bucket. Put those ashes in there. There are some sleeper red coals mixed in with the ashes. Unless the stove has been out for weeks. You're using the stove in the middle of the winter, you can take ashes out every week or whatever. You're going to have sleeping red coals in that ash pot. You put it in a cardboard box. For all you know, one of those coal sleepers will touch the side of that cardboard. All of a sudden, you got a fire. There's a few people that I know that have lost their homes, not necessarily from having a cardboard box. They even had it in a metal bucket. They put it out on a wooden porch floor. A wind came up and fanned it. It caught fire. The bucket got hot enough, caught the wooden floor on fire, and burnt the house down. I know of two instances in the Amish community that happened. They did the right thing by putting it in a metal bucket, but they didn't think about the wind coming along and fanning it. Put it in a metal bucket, put it away from a structure. Let it cool down for a week. If you want to put a lid on it, that's fine, but let it cool down and get cold. Now that is some of the best traction you will ever find when it is icy. So if you have burned boards with nails in them, you want to be careful because you can get nails in your tires. But if you have clean ashes, spread them on your driveway, you can run on it. It'll give you traction. You can drive when you're stuck. Throw some around your tires, on top of your tires, underneath your tires, and you most likely will drive right out. It's some of the best winter traction you'll ever find. Better than cat litter. And it's cheaper. You've got to get rid of it anyway. Now one thing you can do with your wood ashes, just be careful not concentrating too much, but you can sprinkle on your garden. It's potash, a form of potash. Another thing, you want to be very careful. It's not as bad, the pine that we have here, but in the back east we have the hardwoods. Especially the oak. If water got in a bucket with ash, especially the hardwoods, and you went in with your hand to scrape it out, you got burnt. It's caustic soda, it's lye. If you go back and look at what the old pioneers did when they needed to make homemade soap, you know what they did? They usually had back in that day, they didn't have the metal as a convenience. They had an old beer keg or something, a wooden barrel. They put all their ashes in there over the winter. When spring came, they wanted to make their soap or hominy or whatever they did. They usually had a hole in the bottom. They'd start pouring, they used rainwater, soft water. They'd pour it in there and they'd catch it underneath, let it run. Now, I don't know if any of you have heard this, but I remember hearing my grandmother telling us that's the way they used to do when she grew up. By the time I grew up, you just bought lye. We used lye to make our soap. But anyway, homemade soaps. Anyway, as that comes out, now this might sound funny to you, but it's not. It is true. You take an egg. Once the egg floats, it is strong enough, it is lye. It's consistency of lye once that egg floats. It's like putting water in lye. You put your finger in there, you get burnt. It's that toxic. So be careful with water and wood ash. Just be careful with it. It'll burn you. Don't play around too long. Wash your hands if you actually get them wet with ash. With wet ash. So be a little bit careful with it.
Does that apply to maple?
Hard maple, it probably would. Soft maple, I don't know. You might even with the western larch, the tamarack, and the red fir, it has a caustic soda effect. It may not be hardly strong enough for making soap, and it might be strong enough. We've never tried it. Yes. The harder the wood, the stronger the caustic soda gets. And of course, that's a chimney. If you don't have a chimney, we can quickly put one out here, I guess, and run through the window. It might be okay. So we can keep this building warm. I prefer this style over this style, and the reason is, especially up here in the north where you got a lot of snow, the closer to the peak of your roof, the less snow coming down to hit it. Those of you who have chimneys know all about it. This year, I don't know about here, but in our area, we had snow about this deep on our roofs. And when that lets loose and starts moving, there's tons and tons of weight pushing against that. I have seen chimney after chimney like that just buckle over. You might have a fire in your stove. You might be nice and warm. And all of a sudden that stove starts billowing smoke out because that thing's pinched off. Because it tipped over. So I would recommend, if you're putting in a chimney, if it's possible, at all possible, go as close to the peak as you can. Bring it up there. The less snow you've got coming is, the less problems you have. But like that, this is actually off to the end. You see that the roof, so that should be an all right one. But you can go up on the end of the building, you're all right. But where the snow slides, especially if you get an ice dam and that starts moving, it'll move. It is powerful. And of course, that's a section of stainless steel chimney. That's a 4-foot piece is about $150 right now. So you figure out how many pieces you have, plus all the connectors and the floors, how many floors you're going through, and all that. It's very expensive to put in a chimney. I put in a number of them. Now, this is a tutorial on maintaining and using a wood coke stove, how to keep the top nice and clean. If you want to take pictures of that, www.youtube.com, watch. The eventual that put this out is in our room right now. And the stove companies are using this because it's a very good tutorial. And it was Janice Berman, before she was Janice Smith. She and her husband put this together. So, if you want to watch that, she goes in great detail how to take care of the stove, how to maintain, how to heat, and all that. I would highly recommend that you would watch this. Did you get that, Janice, what I sent you? Yes, she asked me for the link again because she had lost it. So I sent it to her, so she got it. So you got to cut. We're used to cutting our firewood with chainsaws. We just go get some gas and Somebody want to go out in the car and get that? It's in the box in the back. That little saw. And I forgot about it. But anyway, you can't get gas for your chainsaw. What are you going to do? You got the nice wood stove in your house. You don't need to heat this up unless you must. So you got a nice stove, you got a nice chimney, but your firewood pile is dwindling very fast. Like I said, the power's been out for a month now. There is absolutely no gas to be found, unless you got some stashed away nobody knows about. What are you going to do? You can pull and pull and pull, but it won't cut much wood. So, what are you going to do about cutting firewood? Now this is a silky saw. This is one of the best saws out there. They're pretty expensive. So those things cut fast. Now they make them like 10-inchers, I think 12-inchers, what they call a 16-incher. I got a 16-incher with like $60. It's about the cheapest I could find. I've been sharing with people to do this, and I said, wait a minute, I don't even have one. I'm going to have, is it locked after all? Okay, sorry. Crosscut saw works here. When you have that hand, just hit the, reach underneath and open it up. You don't even have to click. You can unlock whatever. Crosscut saws work great. This one man can cut way faster with this than two men with a crosscut.
Because like when I was growing up, my dad had one that was just, you know, like kind of
A bow saw.
Yeah.
A bow saw. You're talking about bow saw. Bow saws are good, but this will outcut the bow saw too. But bow saws are way cheaper, and if you have extra blades on hands, yes. Yes. Bow saws are great. I've used bow saws, but then again, you're not really, I mean, all saws get dull. This one will get dull too. Just be very careful you don't cut dirt. Dirt is an enemy to leaves. You think you drug your log with by hand somewhere up to the house or wherever and start cutting up. That little grit in the bark just takes the edge off those teeth so fast. But those things cut like crazy. They're actually designed to pull more than push. And I used it and it really cuts. I was really amazed how fast that cuts. That is one of the best saws that you'll find out there. And I would recommend having one of those. Just have it on hand. Yes, if you're going to cut enough firewood for the night, you might be out there cutting for half an hour to an hour. You can stay warm. It'll get you good arm exercise, good heart exercise. Take your left hand, your right hand, then carry it in, put it in the stove. By that time, you're fit for the night. You don't have to go to the gym no more. Now, you got a nice fridge full of food, and as you saw, the power just went off, and you know that you're limited to about, depends what you got in there, but you know you're very limited how long you can keep that food. Maybe depends on the temperature. Maybe 3 days, some of it, maybe some of it a day, maybe some of it a week. So what are you going to do? They got two different settings here. You can set it one notch or further up. And I tell you what, that thing cuts. I'm going to leave it up here. We're going to have a break in a little bit here. You guys can come up and look at it. But like I say, this is almost $60. Even on eBay, it was still that much. And but that's a real super good saw. But anyway, you got all this food, and I want you to realize, when that power goes off, we have had power shortages, you all have had power shortages. Some of you might be off the grid too, like we are, and you don't find out when the power shortages, when the power goes off. Our neighbors, at the end of our driveway is a kind of a switch, or there's a breaker. People beyond us sometimes call us. They know that the break point is there. Do you have power? Yes, our power is on. Oh, good. That means it's between you and us where the power is on. I said, well, don't count on it, because we don't depend on that. Oh, yeah, right. So I look out the window and see my neighbors on the other side have power. If they have power, I know that it's between us and them. That's the branch going out there. But if it be on the other side, that means it might be long before it gets fixed. there's more people out of power. So, your power went off. It's tonight, it's got evening now, and you don't think much of it. Just keep the fridge cool and closed as much as you can. Don't open it more you have to. Tomorrow morning you wake up, power's still not on. Fridge is pretty much room temperature now. And you realize you got a bunch of food in there. And you also realize that the grocery store may be out of food here by now. So, are you just going to let that rot? Because that might be the last food you're going to have, that kind of stuff, that nice food. What are you going to do with it? You're just going to eat as fast as you can, as much as you can, and hope you can eat it all before it rots? Gorge yourself for a couple of days, and then figure out what happens next? So what do?
Freeze it.
Freeze? So what are you going to do? Can it is a super good way, but my question is also, do you have canning jars? A lot of people have canning jars, and I'm glad you do. Well, there's also other means. Some people say, well, I got a generator. How long is your gas going to last your generator? You might be able to get by for a day or two. Maybe you can let the generator run long enough to so you eat all the food. Maybe you could do that. How about some other options rather than a generator? How about canning, dehydrating, and so forth? And I'm going to show that. That is what we Amish. That's all. That's the way we did very little drying. Now I don't know why we were not against drying, but I guess it was just simpler to put it in jars. And the average Amish family of 8 or 10 probably had about 1,500 quarts. When the garden grew, of course, as the first came on, we ate until we could keep up. Guess where it went? Can after can after can after can. We stored it away. Guess what happened when the garden stopped producing? What happened then? We started pulling those cans, can after can after can. And we brought them back, we emptied them out, washed them, put them out. Next year came around, it went back down, whatever. You can almost can anything. We can all our meat. A lot of people don't realize, of course we don't eat meat anymore, but a lot of people don't realize that you can meat just as well as anything else. Keeps very well. And of course, dehydrating. Those are fruits. Those fruits that you saw in the fridge, those can all be dried. If you realize that you might not be able to eat it, and I would even recommend, don't gorge yourself. Start realizing, how can I ration what I have? How can I make it last as long as I can? It might be this time of the year. It's a beautiful time for the power to go off. If it's to go off, there's dandelion out there. The stinging nettle is coming up. Stinging nettle is really good steamed. I love it. You want to get it when it's short, or unless it gets big and tall, you can take the leaves. You want to wear gloves of some sort that you don't get stung. But once you put that in water and bring it to a boil and steam it like spinach, cauliflower, anything like that, those stingers are gone. And yet it's tasty. I love it. It is very nutritious, extremely nutritious, some of the healthiest things you can eat. Also lamb's quarter, which just grows in most of our gardens wild, at least in our garden. Pigweed. Those are things you can supplement along with what you have. Make it last as long as you can. Go out there and putting it away. I personally know an individual that one year had a very bad garden, and their garden was just, they didn't have time to take care of the garden. Lamb's quarters grew like crazy in their garden. They ended up canning over 100 quarts of lamb's quarter. And ate it all winter long. So, my question to you all is now, I asked this question about a month ago at that up there. How long will your food last that you have on hand? How long?
Canned goods?
Food. If you were unable to go to the store, how long, with what you have, could you survive with?
We have about a year.
Good. Good. There's some in here that are doing good. If this power goes off the state, I don't think 3 months is going to cut it. I think it's going to be longer than that. Honestly, believe that. It may go through the winter. I just want you to know, and I believe you already know, the powers that be want to reduce the population to about a third. That is their goal. I wish I would have thought about it. I don't know how many of you have seen this died suddenly. I wanted to bring you a bunch of DVDs and I wanted you to go look at them. This is, of course, talking about the vaccine and things like that. It is just sick what is actually going on. Anyway, how long will your food last that you have on hand? Dried, canned, stored away buckets? You need to start thinking. How long will we be able to survive? Now my question to you is, when you buy food, how do you buy food? A little package of rice at a time, a little package of beans at a time, little containers of food to last like 3 or 4 days. Is that the way you buy your food? It's okay, as of yet, to do that. We didn't grow up like that. My wife and I didn't grow up like that. Do you buy in bulk or small packages? Down the bottom, I got this at US Chef's Choice, which used to be cash and carry. You can go down here and do your own math. Down here at Colville, or even like here in the local store. Go look at what a bag of 20 pounds, I just took rice, I didn't took beans or anything, but I took a 20-pound bag of rice. That was back in November, maybe in October. It was 20-pound bag of rice, it was $21.64. I went and looked on the shelf, the 10 32-ounce bags, little bags of brown rice, the same brand and everything. Those were only $4.64 a bag. What a savings, right? You do the math. See the difference? The exact same amount of weight was over twice as much money. Yes, up front it is going to take a little more money, but in the end, you spend so much more. And you make so many more trips to the store where you could maybe just take one trip every once a month. When I grew up, my question is, now, I can't really say that's what we do now, but how often do you go shopping?
Once every 2 weeks and once a month.
Yeah.
I like that. How often do you go shopping?
Once a week.
Once a week. When I grew up as a child, I had 10 siblings. How often do you think we went to town? Once a month was pretty much average. Sometimes we went 2 months. But of course, like you had seen, all those jars, that's what we ate mostly. I don't know why we always bought our flour. We could have ground our own, we always bought our flour. Flour, salt, sugar were the most basic items that we would buy. But once a month, Mom needed another bag of flour. So my dad would go buy another 50-pound bag of flour. Or Mom and Dad went together, whoever. But, so, if you would only have to go once a month, no more often than twice a month, to the grocery store, how much could you save on gas? And look, if you bought in bulk versus that, how much money would you be saving in the end? Quite a bunch. Quite a bunch. Yes, I know. If you don't have the $20 to buy the $22 to buy the 20-pound bag, you have a problem. You might be able to buy a little bag for $4.64, but if you just save a little money and really scrunch, all of a sudden you can start coming ahead and save your spending grocery money, keep it put off to the side. Eventually you can be saving money. You don't need to spend the gas driving to the store as often, and the frustration that the stores sometimes bring with them. When COVID hit, we were into it probably about a month. I went to one of our church family members' house just to see how people are doing, stop by. Now they have a large garden, fairly large garden. They have an orchard, harvesting fruit from their orchard and things. This was about, I think maybe about middle of May or June, beginning of June. It would have been, yeah, it was around the first part of June, I think. Maybe the first week of June. Came to their house and he was proceeding to tell me how he had been to Costco and I remember a couple other stores. He was talking about the large lines. What experience did you have? You remember all these long lines. There was only so many people limited that go into the store at a time. The lines were long. He said, I stood on line for well over an hour. What kind of experience did you have? I said, I haven't experienced it. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, I haven't been to town since they had this problem. He says, we're about a month into it. You haven't had to go to town yet? I said, no, I didn't. He says, I mean, what are you eating? This is him and his wife. I said, well, when we go to town and we buy products, we compare prices for one, and we look at the bulk sides. We go to the bulk sections. We don't even look at the small sections like the 32-ounce sections. We go directly to the bulk and we buy big bags. And I said, I think you need to start thinking about this. You don't even realize how much you could save if you could buy. He says, wow, I never thought about that. Later he talked to me like, you know what? I learned a valuable lesson. I buy in bulk now. So I would recommend that you all buy in bulk. Now, that's another problem. Can be. So you buy 20 pounds of brown rice. That might last you a year. I don't know how much rice you eat. It all depends how much you eat, how often you have rice. Now, how are you going to keep that rice from spoiling? Of course, rice is a dry product. You can put it in a 5-pound bucket. During the summer, it's probably best if you have a rubber seal in it so the bugs can't get to it. Although we have very little problems in this area. Now, in the south, they have huge problems. You gotta seal it off tight enough so that the bugs can't get into it. So anyway, there's various ways to. I know how many of you have heard about putting a candle in a bucket and sucking the oxygen out. It is the oxygen that helps cause the rice to get rancid. Beans doesn't get rancid, wheat doesn't get rancid, but rice will get stale after a period of time. Take a 5-gallon bucket, bring it up close to the top. It'd be probably best if you have a food grade bucket or then put a Mylar bag in there. Bring it about this close to the top. And you probably all have seen these little tea candles. These little metal candles, little round candles about this big around, about this thick. Set that on the very top, make little hollows just not too close to the lid. Light that and snap the lid on tight. That will burn until the oxygen is gone. It is the oxygen that makes your food stale. Your food will last probably almost twice as long by taking the oxygen out before it goes stale. So that's one thing you can do to preserve. Later my wife will show about vacuum sealing as well. We'll show that later. Let's continue on. This was written back in the late 1800s. These people lived like we Amish live today. That's just the way we do. I'm going to go to the bottom paragraph. It's talking about Sister Nelson. She has already canned 138 quarts of tomatoes, 60 quarts of loganberries, and 75 quarts of applesauce, besides cherries, peaches, and apricots. We hope to have 200 quarts of tomatoes put up. We have nearly a bushel of sweet corn dry, and have had sweet corn on the table nearly every day for 2 or 3 weeks. Does any one of you in here have anything close to that? Well, we don't have as large a family, of course. She was, at that time, they were feeding a bunch of people, and they used a lot of this. But back in that day, people did not go to the store. They put it away. When the garden produced it, they put it away. They put out large gardens. They expected that garden to provide for the winter's needs. Sometimes you maybe didn't get as many tomatoes, so eat other things, or applesauce, or whatever. You saw what you had, and you worked your way around it. That's just the way we grew up. How long have we been doing here? We've been going for about an hour. I'm going to take questions and ask for a little bit, then we'll have a break for a little bit, then we'll come back. Somebody might need to use the bathroom. Questions? Yes?
What's about, as you're using your rice, keeping it fresh? how long will rice last?
How long will rice last? It'll easily last a year, especially if you keep the oxygen out of it.
But if you're opening it on a regular basis.
And if you open it, take some out, put that, light that candle
Keep everything.
every time, because you got oxygen back in. Yes, so you just ask how long will rice last, you open up the bucket. Every time you do that, light that candle, put the lid tight again. We have a hand right up here. Just gotta turn you up. Go
How
ahead.
do you keep the chimney clean then?
How do you keep the chimney clean? Good question, good question. Well, they make these brushes with a long handle on them. You go up on the roof.
On the roof?
Yeah.
Too steep.
Too steep, or tie a rope around the other
I'm
side.
not sure it's metal. No, we do it from beneath.
You can do it from underneath, you can. It's just a little harder. But yes, that is something that people that have no experience with stoves and chimneys, it depends how you burn your stove. If you burn a slow fire and you have a bunch of wet wood, that chimney will fill up. Now, as of yet, you can go to Ace Hardware and some places. You can buy something that is, I don't know what it's called, chimney clean or something like that. They recommend throwing in the stove about once a week. It's supposed to make that, release that, and drop it down into the stove.
Creosote destroyer.
Creosote destroyer, whatever it's called.
Well, it's got aluminum in it, I think.
I have been told if you burn a aluminum pie pan about once a week,
Yeah, or a can.
a pop can, so it's aluminum, something aluminum, will basically keep that out. That's what I've been told. I have actually done it. I've never looked what it did to the chimney, but I have done it. Thought, well, maybe that took care of the problem.
But I wonder what it does to the,
I don't
to
know.
the, you know, ash.
To the
You
creosote.
don't want aluminum stuff in.
I know, I agree with you. You might not put that aluminum in the air. But. So anyway, they have those things that are designed for that. Any more questions?
I got one.
Go for it, sister.
Back years ago, I used to can corn, and they didn't have a pressure cooker, and we used lemon juice in the
Right.
boats or pints of corn.
Right.
Is that good or no?
Lemon juice?
Instead of pressure cooking, if you don't have a pressure cooker.
My wife
You can
hates.
cook it forever.
My wife hates pressure cookers. She will not use a pressure cooker. My wife water baths everything. She cooks it for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you cannot do any less than 3 hours. And it depends where you're at, or if you're on a high hill, your altitude goes up to about 3,000 feet, you may have to go 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
So it depends where you're at, how hot your altitude is, no less than 3 hours. But my wife does all the time, she cans upwards to 100 quarts of sweet corn every year she can. Never goes bad.
And we,
Unless the lid opens up for some unknown reason. It's the only reason it goes bad. We never had to throw away corn. We got corn that's probably 5 or 6 years old. Still good.
So cooking it for a prolonged period of time can replace water, or the pressure cooker, is that?
Yes. Fruits, 20 minutes hot water bath. Vegetables, 3 hours. Green beans, carrots, beans, all those, you've got to do 3 hours. My wife does it all the time. We hardly ever have a bad jar. Hardly never.
in the corn, if you use the water bath with the lemon juice, you don't get that discoloration, that brown.
That is
color.
correct. But it doesn't discolor much, even our corn looks pretty much nice as it goes in, as it comes out. Lemon adds a little acid to it. It's supposed to help make it last a little longer. I don't know my wife, I don't think my wife ever does it. You do? Okay, she says she does, I didn't even know. See? It's a good thing she's here. So anyway, yes, any more questions? Well, why don't we have about a 5-minute break, let people go to the bathroom, and we'll go on with part 2. Stretch your legs a little. I've been stretching my legs all the time. Actually, that'll be
Yeah, that's long. Not
Yeah, right click in there, looks good. You want to take a look at it? That is a silky soft. See? Can't get some off the range. You know when you're ready.
Join us.
Let me know when you're ready, brother.
Okay.
I'll wait. I don't think I'm on, right, Mike?
Yeah.
I know. Let me know. No rush. What do you want? Oh, it's not connected to you over there. Okay, there it is.
Just go ahead.
You ready then?
Yeah.
Okay, once again, let's have a short word of prayer. Father in heaven, we've covered a number of items. There's way more to living without power than what we've touched here. So just be with me once again, that I don't move too fast. Clear and plain about it, Lord. Thank you for bringing all the people that are here. We ask this in Jesus' name. Well, I did notice that there was a lot of interest in canning. I am so glad for every one of you that takes interest in it. I really wish there will be about an hour, then we're going to have another small break, and then we'll go into canning and preserving food. I hope you can all stay around for that. My wife's going to pick up Ben, and along with Patty, wherever she is. And my wife's going to talk about the hot bath. She's going to talk about pressure canning and things like that. So anyway, part 2, I did this on Zoom I've been doing this on Zoom for quite a number of times already, all over the New York City and Georgia, and there was a couple other places that had me do it on Zoom. So I was asked to put in. The first time at Gwen's Candy, I did everything in 2 sessions, and they asked me, no, that's too much, you gotta break it down and take more time. I read that. That. Now I want you to look at this. I want you to really think about this. The time is near when large cities will be swept away, and all should be warned of these coming judgments. I want those of you, if you happen to be in the city, my warning, I cannot warn you enough. Get out of the city before it's too late. Get out.
Amen.
Oh, that God's people had a sense of the impending destruction of how many? Thousands of cities. Now, what would that look like? Now, almost given to idolatry. When was this penned? Over 100 years ago. What would be that writer saying today? Why are you still there? Why did the city you're in is going to be one of those thousands? What about the flushing toilet? How many of you like your flushing toilet? I like mine. Did you know that a flushing toilet might still work after the power goes off? Now, I don't know if you realize or not, but recently, Stevens County is one of the slower counties. There's others as well. But recently, they've been pushing people to put in pressurized systems.
What kind?
Pressurized. You can still, unless your ground is wrong and bad, and you don't have proper drainage, you can still legally, they will allow you still legally put in a gravity system. With a gravity system, you can pour water in there as much as you want, use it, use a bucket, carry it in, say your pressure water won't work no more. This will work great. You can pour water down your sink and everything. But if you have a pressurized system, you need electricity to make that work. And I'm wondering if it isn't the big boys at play trying to make so that we're going to run into a problem.
Sure. Why not?
They're encouraging pressurized systems now. It's not forced or mandatory, but they're encouraging it. How many of you have used one of those? I'm so glad for all the hands that went up. So glad. That's all I knew as I grew up. Never had it indoor. We went to our neighbors and I looked at it. Once I got maybe about 13 years old, probably the first time I actually saw one of those, we helped a neighbor and I needed to use the bathroom, and well, there was no barn to go to and no place to go behind hardly. I told him, I gotta go potty. I really gotta go potty. He said, oh, just come in. He takes me in, there's a bathroom. Well, the lid was down and how does this thing work? I managed to figure it out, but I didn't know about the flushing part. But as time went by, I learned. So anyway, those tend to have a little bit of a smell to them, as some of you probably know. Now, you can buy what is called sweet lime or wood ash or even sawdust. Every time you do number 2, sprinkle a little on there. The sweet lime probably keeps them smelling the sweetest. You can buy that at we usually use that mostly. Wood ash also works, it keeps the flies out. But the sweet lime doesn't affect with the breaking down of it. Like sawdust, it starts kind of filling it up faster. When you put in sweet lime, you dig a hole about 4 feet deep. A family of about 8 or 10 could use that toilet for a couple of years. If you had a hole about 4 foot deep, it just disappeared. The sweet lime, it's a white powder. The local hardware stores have it. They use it for block laying. And you just sprinkle a little bit on it. You won't have any flies. It hardly smells at all. You don't use much, maybe half a cup at a time. 50-pound bags, it lasts for a year. Just take a cup and sprinkle a little bit on there. You walk away. You won't have flies. You won't have. It just decomposes and goes away. Now, wood ash affects it slightly with the decomposting. It still works. You can use it. You might not be able to get the lime. Sawdust works. But sawdust doesn't break down near as quick, so it tends to fill it up a little faster. But use what you have, do the best you have. Now, use your imagination when you're having these outhouses. That's what the one on the left there, that's what ours look very much like. Of course, we had 2 holders instead of 1 holder. Now here somebody had an imagination, they wanted to have it looking beautiful. And you want to do that, go for it. And here's another somebody's imagination. That's an outhouse. So, if you want to make something beautiful, go for it. Use your imagination. This is what I would recommend for an outhouse. You can have this on your property and nobody thinks nothing of it, but they have a tank in the bottom and they're just plastic. Take a saw or something, cut a hole out of it, and put it over a hole in the ground. Nobody suspects. It is illegal, even in our county, to have one of those without a tank underneath. I found that out the hard way. Somebody turned us in for not having a septic system, and I argued and almost got myself in trouble. He said the only way you can continue using that is if you put a tank in so it can be pumped. Who's going to pump it when there is no power? Right now, today, you can get one of those. You go to a place where porta potty company that brings them out. They always have old ones that they're pulling and don't use them anymore. My son, I found him online. We went out to where was it? Up towards Wenatchee. There was a porta potty company. They had a whole bunch of them that they were just selling cheap, and we bought several, brought them home, and we got it put on a little trailer. So when we church in the wilderness, we don't always have to rent porta potties. So we got to have them on a trailer to take them with us. We're going to cut a hole in the bottom where we're going to have a tap so we can drain it into our septic system. But anyway, cut a hole in the bottom, set it over your hole. Nobody's going to turn you in. You look legal, you look good. You can set it up and be ready. Just don't talk about it. Hey, I got a porta potty that's sitting over a hole. No, don't talk about it. These are some things that, now the one on the bottom you wouldn't want to use in the house, or the one on the bottom of your trousers is a nice one. But the other ones, sit down alongside the road. But the other ones, the one on the right, it's got a garbage bag, which you can use and throw in the dumpster if you want. The top one on the left has got a reservoir on the bottom where you can use for a couple of days. There's only a couple of people, and then go dump it. But I would recommend the one with the bucket. That is the one that I would recommend that you would get. It's easier to clean. That one on the top is kind of difficult. You can rinse it out and so forth. Take the one on the bottom of the bucket. You can get lids, a variety of lids. You can just go on Amazon, eBay. Easy to get lids that are purposely made for a 5-gallon bucket. Cheap, very cheap. They sit right on top, and you can use it. This is what you want to use at night. When it's cold, you don't want to go out to that outhouse. In the morning, you take that out, dump it in that house, rinse it out, have it nice and clean for the next day, next night. Or maybe you might even use it during the day if it's really cold out, and maybe not go out very often. We used to have the old commodes. I grew up with a commode, which was not a 5-gallon bucket, but people Amish are going more into 5-gallon buckets because you can't get those old commodes hardly anymore. So what are you going to do when that doesn't shoot water anymore? Are you going to get clean? What do you think?
Heat water.
Probably.
Heat the water on the wood stove and pour it into a bucket
Good job.
in your shower.
You think your showers are going to last 20 minutes then?
No.
Probably not.
If you have a good husband, yes.
Pity your husband then. Feel sorry for your husband then. Well, we were in Africa a number of years ago. They didn't have these nice fancy things like we do. Although the main house did have a kind of a shower. But they had a big plastic tank up on the stand, black poly tank. They filled it with water. The sun hit it. Of course, the wet temperature is about between 88, 85, about 95. It does vary a little there. It was on the equator there. We learned to take our showers in the evening instead of the morning because overnight it cooled off, the sun not shining on it. It was pretty chilly in the morning. We just got the temperature of the water that was in the tank. Now, there's various different ways you can buy these shower bags and hang them in the sun. Those work really well. You got a couple of gallons of water in those. I mean, like I say, your shower might be shorter than you're used to. You can get by with. But in Africa, we had that shower. That was only for the rich people. The natives, they went pouring. They didn't take showers. They didn't take baths. They poured. That's what they called it. They had a kettle where they heated the water over a stick fire, and they took a bucket, mixed it till it was the temperature they desired. And then there was a little enclosure with just a tarp around it, and slipped in there, and the sun could look down on them, but nobody else saw them. And what they did, they poured a little water on them, and they lathered up, and they poured more water. They were done. We're very spoiled people today. This stuff may be taken from us, where we will have to resort to something different. But anyway, that works. So there's various different ways. That's what I grew up with. That's the way we bathed. We had a tub very similar to that. Now, we didn't do it in the outside, though, but we had in the living room, behind the stove. The tea kettle was on the stove. We had a little, either having a sheet hanging up by some nails or something, or a little divider. And everybody knew not to go in the room while somebody's taking a bath. Everybody respected everybody. And so we bring in whatever, 3 gallons of cold water, whatever. You don't use that much water when you carry everything in and carry everything out. You would not fill that thing halfway full because you would have a job on hand. So we put it in the bottom. We might have had about this much water. We had the tea kettle on the stove. We got a little cool, poured a little more water. And for the younger ones, 3 or 4 bathed in the same water, and then it was changed. And we put in fresh water, and the next couple people, whatever, and that's the way we got ourselves cleaned. And so that is a way to do it. You can do it. Now, out here in the country, most of us have something that looks similar to that. Now, that is a well, as you all know. It might be 150 feet deep. It might be less. It might be more. You can take that lid off. The power's off. You have no more gasoline for your generator. You can look down there, maybe see the water, maybe not see the water. Even if it was within this far from the ground level, how are you going to get it out of there? That becomes a problem. How are you going to get the water out of there? You may have one of those frost trees right beside it. You pull up the handle and nothing comes. What are you going to do? Now you got a problem. The water's right there. You can't get it. Now, these are 2 different styles of pumps. I've installed both. One on the left is what we Amish mostly used. We, of course, had a mechanical pump jack that we hooked onto that, and we put a gasoline engine on it. We pumped our water for all of our animals. We had windmills where we put over them. I installed a number of windmills. I was kind of a pump guy. I did everything, I guess I should say, almost. But I installed a pump and set up windmills. I set up a 75-foot windmill on my own property. And so I did a lot of things. But on the right here, how many of you have heard of the simple pump? Some of you did. Good. I'm glad you did. Well, back in November, one of our church family wants me to put one in for them. Back in November, I ordered that. They are in back order. I guess there seems to be a problem with getting stainless steel right now. I ordered that pump in November. And the brother just asked me Sabbath evening after Sabbath. He hasn't mentioned anything about that pump. I said, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned it, and I haven't. They said they're in back order. I just got an email this morning. Came in this morning. I must have sent it Friday or whatever. That pump, I need to pay for that pump so they can ship. It was that low on back order from November to now. Now that pump is this big around, the cylinder is this big around. That will go in alongside your regular submersible pump. You do not have to pull your submersible pump. That is designed to go right alongside it, all the way down into the water. Yes, it only brings up about a cup of water per stroke. But you know what? You can get water. It might be work. Depends how far your water is down. I installed one of those, very exactly the same one. No, it's a little different than that. Slightly different than that. I installed one for a lady, Russian lady, and her water level was almost 200 feet. You get a little bit of a workout lifting water out of that hole, 200 feet, up through that pipe and finally out of the top. You work. But if you are under 100 feet, 30 feet, those things go really easy, really easy. So it just depends how far your water is down. Now the one on the left there, that may have a cylinder this big versus this big. That will bring you much larger volume of water. If you do not have an existing submersible pump in there, that would be the way to go. Or unless you want to get rid of your submersible pump that's in there. That would be the way to go. It brings up so much more water, unless you're really deep. Then you're going to be working very hard. But up for 100 pounds, 100 feet water, if you got to lift the water 100 feet, it's not too awful bad. A little child probably won't do it, but an adult can easily pump water. That's all we had when we grew up. That's all I knew. Now this is another thing. This is, as far as I know, you could go order one on tomorrow. Probably have it within a week or so. These I'm recommending people to install because they're readily available. But again, you cannot install this with your existing submersible. It's too big. It is a small submersible that goes down, it's about this big around, goes down into the well. What you need to do is, you can maybe use your existing pipe that goes to your house or wherever, but tee into that, or cut it, put your tank somewhere. If you have a hill, that's beautiful. That's what we always do. We always put our tanks up somewhere. Of course, the wind would pump the water over there, but these, we couldn't use solar, but we're allowed to. But these solar panels, as soon as the sun hits it, that pump will kick in gear and pump as long as the sun shines. In that tank, there's a switch, a float, just like your toilet bowl has a float. When it comes up, it turns off the pump till the water drops. The pump kicks on, keeps it full. Now, if you have 1,000 gallon, 2,000 gallon, 3,000 gallon storage, you do the math. How long will your water last? How much water do you use in a day? In the summer, you probably use a lot more, especially as a garden. But these solar pumps really do work well. And you have a large storage. Now, what you do with this tank, once you have this tank, as of yet, you can just put a pressurized system in your basement or in your house or somewhere where it doesn't freeze. It'll gravity feed to there, and then you can pressurize it there, and you still have pressure water as long as it lasts. When power goes off, then you have your just water flowing without pressure, unless you have a nice big hill to put it on. So those are very readily available. I would recommend those. I mean, you can use the other one like I showed, the simple pump, and be able to get water later. I'm supposed to install two just shortly here for those. So I recommend those. Now here's another way that you can do. This is water collection, rainwater. Now, rainwater, I grew up in Missouri. Until I was 13, I didn't grow up because it was hard to grow up. We had a problem with the area where we were at. It was hard to get good water by drilling wells. You could get water, but it was nasty. It tasted bad. It was smelled bad. Very high in sulfur and other minerals that was just people didn't like. So we had in our house, we got a lot of rain there. It rained almost every week. Our house, we had a eave trough on it and collected the water in an underground system. And now this is just a picture showing you can use barrels like this. See, they've got the barrels connected so the flow is full even to the top. But you need a filter because the birds fly over your roof and nobody tells them not to do their thing on the roof. whatever else falls on there. So it will go into your water. So you need a filter system. We had a filter system in ours. I'm sure it was there when my father's parents moved there. The box, as my memory serves, like let's say I was 13 years old, I would say it was about this big square. It was made of cement of bricks, probably about this high. And I remember my father one day going in there because there was lots of grass and birds dropped, they were making nests, occasionally dropped something on, leaves sometimes fell in there. I remember my father cleaning out, it was just full of debris on top. And I remember there was black stuff. I mean, my father digged into it. I don't remember what was all in there. I remember there was sand. I remember there was piece-ice gravel. And I remember there's something black, which was probably charcoal. I don't know what it was, but I'm guessing it was probably charcoal. That filtered it. It went through that filter system and into the storage. We drank that. Nobody got sick ever. And so, now, here's another thing that I would recommend. And some of you I know have them already. But get a filter of some sort. You can get, they call them straws for camping. You can get filters where you go out and you can just use regular creek water. Do not drink creek water. Now if there's a spring where it flows into the creek, that spring water should be safe and good. But do not go drink out of a creek, especially when the power is out. You won't be able to go to the hospital because you may die. Creek water is contaminated with beavers many times. They call it beaver fever, or there's another name for it, Giardia. If you get that, you're going to struggle to get over that. Now you can with charcoal and other things, but you get very sick, or can get very sick. So you get extreme diarrhea and you can't do anything about it hardly. So you can go on Amazon, eBay, just put in water filters. Thousands of water filters will pop up. You pick and choose what you want. They have a huge variety. They have some that have a plastic bag on the top, like a 5-gallon bucket-sized bag, with a filter at the bottom where you just fill up with water out of the creek, you hang it with a tree, put your bottle or your container underneath and just let it, as it filters in there, fill it up. The variety is endless. So you pick and choose what kind of filter, but I would highly recommend you all getting a water filter. If you're running out in the woods, they have what they call straws, where you just put it in the water and you suck out of the creek, and it's safe. You won't get Giardia. And so, get yourself a filter. Have it on hand. If you don't need it, you don't need it. So, most of you, I think, are pretty much in the country. This was done for people that are in the city. I did this for when people that are in New York City, and then also in California, I did this. So, people kept asking me what kind of house. I'm limited on funds. I'm probably able to buy the property, but I won't be able to buy a house. I can put up a $100,000 home. What am I going to do? How am I going to get about it? And a lot of these people are just a couple, husband and wife, or single person, or so forth. And this is what I came up with. Some people say, well, should I get an RV? It means all equipped, ready to go. Well, a nice RV, you all know it's very expensive. A lot of money. So this is what I encourage people. I said, especially around here, I don't know about everywhere, but in our area, you can find these little cabins. They're really nice little cabins. They got windows in them, a lot of them. Right now, you can buy a 10 by 20 with a little deck in the front for about $9 grand. 12 by 24 for about 12 grand. That's kind of what they're running at this present time. This is what they'll look on the inside like. They're not finished. They cannot sell them as home. They cannot. It's illegal. So this is what they just sell them as hunting cabins. They can't finish them. You can take them home. A lot of you have an idea of electrical and also plumbing. We just got one at our house, a property where we're fixing up. We insulated it all, lined it inside with electrical and everything. Nobody's stopping you from doing that. As far as I know, it's legal in our county. And but there are states, counties, where it's completely illegal to take these and convert them into living space. It's absolutely illegal. Some states, it's illegal to have tiny homes. They're banning tiny homes in some states. So when I do it on Zoom, I tell people, they ask me, well, where should I move? And you guys haven't hardly been asking any questions like these people. These people don't know anything. I'm sorry, I hate to say that. They know their job, they know how to survive in the city, but when it comes to country living, they don't know, they don't understand. I get so many questions where it's very difficult sometimes to answer. Oh, my husband, he doesn't want to get out of the city, but I'm convinced of the Lord that I need to get out. What do I do? Well, I'm not here to separate families. Fast and pray. God can work miracles. So, this is one way. By the time you get it lined and finished on the inside, you may have 12,000 in it or so. And that's a fairly reasonable, cheap house. 2 people can easily survive in something like this. Once we get into the country living stuff, we don't need those huge, fancy homes. And then there's shipping containers. You can get shipping containers. Very strong. People do that all the time, and your imagination can grow as you do shipping containers. Look at that. 2-story. And look at that. Now that would be quite a bit of money tied up in the shipping containers, but your imagination can go. So I would recommend something simple. That's not too bad there. But yeah, if you go on and do a Google search on shipping container houses, you'll be amazed what pops up. Now if you're really limited on funds, you just basically got your property, and you really want to get out, and you want to, I would recommend getting a canvas wall tent. These plastic wall tents are so flimsy.
Yeah.
Get a canvas wall tent. My wife and I, our family, lived in one of these. When we moved to Montana, we moved there, it was early spring. And we lived in that until the snow, into the winter. It actually was decent. We had some heat in it and cooked in it. She had her cook stove in there, and it was, of course, way more full than that. But it is amazing how nice you can make a wall tent. What you can do with a wall tent, and so it was actually fun. We enjoyed it. One thing we didn't enjoy, my wife was always worried. There was rattlesnakes. There was just always worried that a snake is going to crawl in there, which it would be really hard to keep them out. But we never had a problem. God blessed us, and God took care of us. But so, there's what I show people. You can at least put one of these up. You can buy a good canvas wall tent. Maybe I should put a price on it. Maybe somebody knows more about it than I. But I would say $1,500 for a decent wall tent. And you can live, I'm just guessing on price. And you can live in it for a long, you can even live in it over winter if you have a good stove and stuff. Because it's warm enough, the snow is going to melt and go off, and it won't build up on there hardly. So you can make do. So it's something you can look at. How about transportation? That's something everybody asks me, always. How are we going to get around? We can't get gas. How am I going to get around? How will you go get your food and so forth? Groceries. How do I get to my neighbors? What am I going to do when this thing no longer drives because there's no gas for it? What are you going to do? A lot of people say this over the years. We'll get a horse. Do you have any experience with horses? Have you ever had a horse? Some of you have, and I'm very thankful for those of you that have. But the thing of it is, if you have a horse, some people have a horse and it's just a pet. It doesn't do more than their dog. They just feed it and they play with it. Do you know how to harness a horse, saddle a horse? Some of you do. We're living in more country, we're talking to more country-style people. But when I talk to these city people, oh, well, I'm going to go to the country, I'm going to get myself a horse like the Amish. You don't learn that overnight, guarantee you that. I have, back when I was Amish, I trained a lot of horses. Probably harder to train the people than it was to train the horses. I'm just going to be honest with you. Those people want to get behind the horse and think they know everything about it. They scare me. They're going to have a runaway. They're going to kill themselves. Right now there's an elderly lady that can barely even breathe, can hardly even walk. She is determined that I help her get a team of horses. I tell her, you have absolutely no idea what you're trying to do. You're going to get yourself killed. She can hardly even walk. and she has got severe problems with her lungs. She can barely breathe. And she has to have, and she's way overweight, she's got to have this team of horses. She says, pleading and begging with me, and I tried to explain to her. I said, sister, you don't understand. She has had horses, she has ridden horses when she was young. But she's no way she can get that harness on them. She is planning to go out and cut hay with these horses. She wants a hay mower. She's bought a hay mower. She wants a hay rake. She's going to go out and cut hay and rake hay. I said, you're going to get yourself killed. If you don't know horses, that horse is going to be a tremendous deadweight in your back pocket. It's going to tie you down. But that was our lifestyle. That's the way we got around. We still got the carriages, both the carriages. What will you feed the horse? If you have a horse, how are you going to get feed for it?
2.5 tons of winter of hay.
I'm saying more like
For
3.
one horse.
More like 3.
3.
We tell people 3. Well, no, you're right. If they're just feeding in the winter and pasture graze in the summer, you're right. But you feed them year round, you're looking at no less than 3. Absolutely 3 times. So, you can't buy, you can't sell, where are you going to get your hay? You might have a horse there that's hungry, and he might be an asset to you, but all of a sudden this horse is hungry, what are you going to do about it? Now, in areas where the snow doesn't get as deep, they might be able to forage through the winter, but here we have a problem. I still got all that. I could go out tomorrow and cut hay. Well, there's not enough hay to cut tomorrow, but as soon as hay comes, I could still do it. We got it. I know all about it. But how many of you know how to do that? You don't know. Then next, oh yeah, I have to cut hay. This is what I'm talking to this sister. You're going to cut hay, but once the hay is cut, what are you going to do next? You can't get gas to run a gasoline baler. You can't get string to tie the bales and strings. What are you going to do with that grass that's laying on the ground? You might be able to cut it. This is the way we did it. I took 2 people. We like to have 3 people. Another one in the front, the stack in front, and we raked the hay in a row. I still got all that. I can still do it. I haven't done it in a long time. We're baling everything now. Do you have that equipment? No. Then of course after that, you got to figure out how to get it off of there and stack it somewhere. Do it by hand. No. I encourage people, forget the horses. You won't need your horses. And the thing of it is, this is what I say, how about a bicycle? Well, I would encourage you to get something more like that. Some with a basket in front and back. A fit person can travel as far on a bike as a horse will travel. You hear, a fit person. You might not be climbing as steep a hill with a bike as you will with a horse. I just recommend that you forget your horse, unless you have the means of taking care of it and everything, and know how. A horse is great, but how far are you going to go anyway? The grocery stores will not have food. The only reason you need any sort of transportation is to go to see how your neighbor is doing, take care of your neighbors, help your neighbors, maybe carry food to your neighbors and so forth. I would highly recommend a bicycle. Highly recommend a bicycle. Over anything else if you want to get around. And we're going to move a little bit faster here. So, your power went off. You have no lights. Oh, I forgot we need a lanterns in there, that's right. I'll bring them. You might say, I got candles. I got kerosene lamps. Well, that's good if you do. But number 2, how do you know how to use them? Well, candles pretty simple, but how long is your candles going to last? How long will your supply last? A couple of days? Most people have got maybe a week or 2. What about a year? Can you go a year without with what you have? Well, this is what I'm going to tell you already. Maybe we need to go to bed a little early and use a little daylight. Just do more in daylight.
Yeah.
Oh, totally forgot. But I forgot to bring the kerosene. You can go to Costco, not Costco, Walmart, North 40. They have these 2.5-gallon kerosenes. I really wish I would have forgotten what I did. That's where we almost did. We bought kerosene. We used to be able to buy it at the gas station. They used to have a kerosene kerosene pump.
Yeah.
It's almost, doesn't hardly exist anymore. There might still be one in Spokane. There used to be, not so long ago. But you buy the kerosene, it's about this big, this wide, this tall. They're 2.5 gallons. I bought one last November when I was doing this. I just literally forgot to bring it along. We bought the lamps, but anyway. And I think, how many of you have used a lamp? Well, then I don't really have to talk much about the lamps. You know, the one on the right, they're for the house. The one on the left is called a hurricane lamp. And the reason they call that, you can go out where it's windy and they don't blow out. Now there's a secret though that I'm going to tell you about. When you carry your lantern and the wind is coming from this direction, carry it in this hand. It is designed to resist direct wind. But you carry it on this side with your legs walking, woof, 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 woof. The wind goes around, it's more likely to blow out. But if it's hanging directly into the face of the wind, it'll endure a lot of wind. So we always knew to carry the lantern on the side where the wind came from. It wouldn't blow out hardly, never. But carry it on the other side just with your body could cause a wind whip and it just sucked it out. So I'm so glad for all the hands that went up. How much kerosene do you have on hand, those of you who have the lamps? Now, they make this fancy oil, this scented oil, this colored oil, lamp oil. A lot of that, by adding those additives, will not burn very clean. It will crust up the wicks. It's very expensive. I recommend to buy 2.5 gallon. A 2.5 gallon jug last November was $28. I remember well after we got married where I could buy kerosene for under $1 a gallon. But now it's just very expensive. You get a good kind of kerosene, the 1K I think it's called, kerosene. I was going to bring the jug so people could see it. That's the way we always buy it. Buy it in bulk. That will last an average home over winter unless you burn them all night long. We usually just burn them until we went to bed and blew them out. So how do you turn out that lamp? You take that little knob inside and turn it out, or you put it out?
Blow it out.
Good. Some people know. You blow it out. Now you watch these movies. You see these movie stars going and turning that lamp out. Don't do it that way. Yes, it can work, and it does work until that wick has been burnt long enough that it gives a crust on top. It depends on the kerosene. Some kerosenes crust more than others. But once there's a crust on top, you can turn that off and that crust will break off. It'll stay on there and it'll stay lit. You keep turning and keep turning and keep turning. Once it's not going, all of a sudden that wick can drop into the bottom of your globe. And when that happens, that wick may have a red coal on it yet. Now you got fire mixed with kerosene. Now I experienced it my own self in my own home. That happened. We still have the lamp. It was a keepsake with my grandfather's name. My grandfather's, which has got the namesake of me. I got it because his name was Moses, my mother's father. So it was an inheritance. It was a fairly small lamp. I turned it down, it would go out and figure out why it's not. I didn't want to turn it off. I was just turning it down, so it was smoking. I tried to turn it down more, and it still kept smoking. And all of a sudden, what happened? And I saw just immediately that globe filled up with a white smoke as that hit the oil. I ran to the door. I knew the danger. I knew that it could explode momentarily. Ran to the door. It happened to be winter. There was snow out. And I just flung it out in the snow. Well, with the heat on everything, inside everything, it did go out, hitting the snow. It broke the glass chimney on it. But the heat caused the globe to crack all the way down to the bottom. I did put JB oil on it. It still works now. But so do not turn it off. It's dangerous, or can be dangerous. If the wick is nice and clean, yes, you turn it down, it'll go off. But you are asking for trouble. Drop it down, blow into it, or take a piece of paper. It'll go out real easy. They're not designed for wind. They'll go out very easy. The other lanterns, open the bottom as you light it, just blow into it. Do not leave it set at whatever height you have it set at. Next time you're ready to light, you don't have to do nothing. Just light it, and it's the right height and everything. Rarely turn our lamps much. As the wick burns down, we turn it up a little bit. Unless we want to maybe have burn a light, night light, and just turn it down to dim. But rarely do we turn our lamps much as Amish. We blow them off, we light them, and we blow them off. Out. Blow them out, do not turn them down. Now, you can get Crisco. You can go online. There's so many people teaching you how to use Crisco. You can take a little birthday, a tiny little birthday candle. Take a cup, a glass, you want to use a clear glass, fill it with Crisco, put a birthday candle in the middle and light it. That candle will burn for a very long time because that Crisco flows into it, just keeps feeding it. That's something you can do, and it works. I've done it, just doing an experiment. Now again, here's the way, you can actually buy these on Amazon or eBay. This is designed to fit on one of these. They're about 10 bucks. It says quart jar light, lamp or something like that. Now there's the wick, I put an arrow there. Now when you need to keep that wick clean, sometimes when they get crusty, you may actually need to use a scissors and just cut them straight. If one end pokes up, the middle pokes up, it's not straight. Whatever points up a little higher than the other edge will cause the flame to be higher on that side. So you want to have them straight, maybe even slightly, just a tiny little bit rainbow is the best. They'll make the nicest flame. Never turn them up till they smoke, because you're used to these bright lights, and all of a sudden, those of you, you know what I'm talking about. All of a sudden, the light power's off, you light that, oh boy, it's dim, more light, more light. Well, they just produce so much light until they smoke. As soon as they start smoking, your house will get smoky, the chimney, the globe will just get filled with smoke, and you won't get much light out of them anymore. So keep them burning without smoke. Of course, if you buy that, you're then going to have to buy that, which is about $4, I think. They're fairly cheap. And so how are you going to communicate when your phones don't work?
Write a letter.
Who's going to deliver the letter? Who's going to deliver the letter? Probably use your bicycle. Walk. Smoke. Well, you got to teach people how to learn how to read smoke signals. What if I'm sending a smoke signal to this brother over here, and you happen to see it? How will you survive without Facebook, TikTok, and all the rest of the media you like to be on?
Very nicely, thank you.
I agree. I agree. The young generation is going to have a hard time with that. Not all. I believe there's some in the room here that would just survive well, does survive well without it today. So, but yes, there are people that will have a very hard time when that goes away. How about spending more time with your Bible? Reading the Word of God. You know, I believe I can honestly say a very large percent of the world's population today, even in third world countries where they don't have the convenience, they still have phone, they are on Facebook and all kinds of media. How much better could we sleep if that phone was turned off and we didn't get that last text before we went to bed? We read the Word of God, we went to bed, God was in our thoughts, and we wouldn't have that last text. The first thing in the morning, I believe I can honestly say that a large percent of the people, maybe even in this very room, wake up with a notification on their phone. Right? You read that notification, whether you know it or not, that notification sets your day. Either for a good day or for a not so good day. If you get a message that is discouraging, your day is set for a discouraging day. That message will program you for your day. Now, what if you did not go check that message and you went into the Word of God and you spent time with God? Then if that message came, then when you finally got to that message, you now have your time with God, and you went to that message, no matter what that message says, it will not have the effect on you that it would have otherwise. Because you just spent time with God. Are you prepared for a very nasty message or a very good message? How about working in the garden? How about foraging for food, etc.? When you can't go ahead and get on this device. See, in bed, first thing. Probably got a message. Bing! Gotta go look at it. Do you have garden seeds? Or do you have a garden spot to plant a garden? I hope we all do. Do you have garden seeds? Or are you planning to go get them when the power goes off? It's going to be too late. Do you know how to save seeds from your own plants? Dawn Trammell, she probably was here, wasn't she? A while back. I'm sure she talked about some of those things. Do you know what wild edible plants to eat? We need to start learning those things. We need to spend time. Right now, Dr. Google, Dr. YouTube, you can pretty much learn anything on there that you want if you want to go that route, or you can start learning on your own, practicing on your own. Right now we still have the privilege at our fingertips to learn all these things. Learn. Learn. Get a book. I recommend that you would get books, because when Dr. YouTube is gone, and you can't get on Dr. YouTube, if you have a doctor book, and you know how to read, you still got it. Get books. Don't depend on the internet. Get books. Because the internet will stop. I don't know when, but it will stop. These are some of the things that I would recommend that you would have. Probably pretty much all of these for your garden tools. Get them, have them on hand. The judgments of God are soon to be poured out upon earth.
Right. Yeah.
Then not be ready, and it does happen. On the night prior to the destruction of the cities of the plain, rioted with pleasure. Lot was derided for his fears and warnings. But it was these scoffers that perished in the flames. That very night the door of mercy was closed, forever closed to the wicked, careless inhabitants of Sodom. The same voice that warned Lot to leave Sodom bids us, come out from among them and be ye severed, and touch not the unclean. Those who obey this warning will find a refuge, as Lot did. Now, the refuge that Lot got, was that another beautiful city or what? What was that?
A cave.
It was a cave, right? Little children, no longer be exposed to the temptations of the cities that are ripe for destruction. The Lord has sent us warning and counsel to get out of the cities. Then let us make no more investments in the cities. Fathers and mothers, how do you regard the souls of your children? I'm just going to ask you parents, how do you regard the souls of your children? Are you repairing the members of your families for translation into the heavenly courts? Are you preparing them to become members of the royal family, children of the heavenly King? What shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? How will ease, comfort, convenience compare with the value of the souls of your children?
Yeah.
The city has, for the most part, ease, comfort, and convenience. If we place ourselves under objectionable influences, Can we expect God to work a miracle to undo the results of our wrong course? No, indeed. Get out of the cities as soon as possible and purchase a little piece of land where you can have a garden where your children can watch the flowers growing and learn from them lessons of simplicity and purity. King David says this, I have seen young, I have been young, and now am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken,
Praise the Lord.
nor his seed begging bread. Brothers and sisters, does that mean that we can just stay in the cities and live the life of ease?
No.
When we have been told to get out of the cities and do not stay there, are we mocking God and thinking that God is just going to take care of us anyway? Brothers and sisters, this is my last slide. I want you all to, and most of you, I believe, are in the countries already, maybe all of you are. Just get ready to help those that are going to be fleeing from the cities with the clothes on their back. That may be sooner than we think. I will not even try to put a time on it. God only knows. But we know that those that powers that be are playing. So this is the end, and we're going to close here, and we're then going to part 3 for canning, and we don't need the projector no more. So the sisters will take over from here. Do we want to have a couple minutes break, and then, oh, I should ask, are there questions that you would like to ask? Feel free to ask questions if you want. Maybe I didn't make something clear enough. Well, I don't see any hands, so we will stop here and, oh, go ahead, brother.
I've heard of toilets, outside toilets, that made 2 sides. One was used for, say, a year or something. And it was compost.
Composting toilets, yeah.
And the other was,
Yeah. Yeah, there's a variety of different toilets that you can find online and so forth. And so, if you haven't done so, start doing your research, figure out what you're going to do. I just all want you to know, I do not believe it's going to happen. But what if the power went off tonight? I don't think it's going to happen, I honestly don't. Or what if it went off next week and it was going to stay off for a very long time? What are you going to do? First off, do not panic. Turn to God.
yeah,
God will not forsake the righteous. Your comfort and ease may be gone forever, but God will be there at your side. If you go out in the city just to survive, you're in trouble. But if you go out of the city because God told us to go out, God is going to be there to help us. Amen. So, may the Lord bless you.
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead, sister.
I have a son who has bought a bus, and he has pretty much changed it into living quarters.
Yes, you can do that.
Those are, you can get one of those.
Yes, you can. Fairly
Pretty
reasonable.
reasonable.
Yes, you can. There are many different ways that you can do that. Oh, sorry. Yes, sister.
I was just going to say, I've been collecting books. Amazon has a number of really good resources on edible plants, on medicinal plants, on various things that you can forage for.
Yes.
There's some really, really good texts, a lot of them with photographs. So
Very good. Yes. The photographs
really
do
good
help.
resources. Just
Yeah.
look for. I don't remember what the exact search I did was, but I think wild edible plants or
Yes.
something like that.
And then you can also put in wild edible plants for the Northwest.
Yes, yes.
Our area here has wild edible plants that some other areas don't have. So we should, in fact, I would highly recommend, and I know there's people in the church that could quickly take you out and show you lots of wild edible plants. If you haven't done so, make a meeting sometime in the near future and just go out. Right now is a perfect time. The spring is coming around. Go out and somewhere in the nature, in the woods somewhere, and just start identifying plants that are edible. That would be very helpful. And again, Do not depend on this for when the power goes off, because this is probably not going to work. Get books where you can open the pages and read. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
What did the Amish do for refrigeration?
That's a very good question. We use cold water for a lot. We cool our milk that way. We sold milk. We pump water from the well. The well water is around 60 degrees, and we would run it through until it was cool, of course with the wind pumping it. If you have a creek on your property, that water, if it's shaded, it's going to be around 60 degrees. It won't be quite as cold as your refrigeration, but it's going to be nice and cool, and it'll help cool you. It'll preserve your food much longer than just having it sitting on the table in your room.
So, because you mentioned in refrigeration, mainly canning.
We put mostly everything in cans.
So, do you have any other recommendations for chilling?
For chilling, well, ice is good, but you won't be able to get ice. Not really.
So just
Find the coldest, yeah, just, you might have to just put it in cans. Also, vacuum sealing will prolong. If you cook a soup or something, you know you won't be eating the next day. You can put it just in a jar and vacuum seal. You can almost double the shelf life. Okay.
Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a break for you to move around a little bit. Underneath your seats, under the front left, put your hand under there and see if there is a sticky note. It should look like this. Anybody find any under their seat? What did it say? What? Okay. If it says a book, then you get a book. So come on and get a book. And if you don't have, so if you don't have a book, if you have something that says a canner, okay, we got a canner for you. Awesome. And we'll have, there's a book in here. And what this book is, it's the blue ball book. That's the canning book. And I go through this book when canning season comes. This is on my counter. I go through this. This is what I use. So, there you go. Now, have a canning. Okay. So, I'm going to go over pressure canning a little bit. I can do that. Oh, that works. Oh boy, that's going to be here, listen. Okay. I'll put it right there.
I'm not going to tell her.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of go over pressure canning. Who's done pressure cooking? Anybody done pressure cooking? Who has not done pressure cooking? Pressure canning. Pressure canning. I've done pressure canning. Okay. There's a number of different pressure canning cookers. This is not for canning. This is if you are just doing soup or something. Or this size. This is not for canning. But I wanted to show you the little gadget here, and it's the weighted one. And this one will go like this here. I don't like those for canning, for big type canning. It's okay for this, but it's still, you gotta be careful. First time I used this, we first got married, and I had never used one of these before. And I just put it on the stove with split pea soup, and I just let it go. And this thing was just going crazy, and all of a sudden it came off. I had split pea soup all over my kitchen. And after that I learned how to use it. pressure cooker by itself. You never go and do something else. This is your job. Because you want to watch these gauges. And it depends on your elevation. If you are, if you're 2,000, it might be 10 pounds. If you're climbing, depending on your elevation, and your book will tell you, your instruction book will tell you, if you increase in elevation, you might go 12 pounds, 13 pounds. You watch this gauge like there's nothing else to do. You watch that gauge, and when it gets up, if it's in the 20s, it says caution. And I have had it there go before, and I go, ah, because I wasn't watching close. I turned my heat down. I just turned everything off and got that down, but don't ever let it go past there. So you'll watch it, and when it gets to the pressure that you need for whatever you are canning, you turn your heat down, and you try to keep that pressure right in there, and you will find on your stove where to keep that heat. And I have a propane. I got a propane stove. It'll work on wood stoves too. You will have to learn where on the wood stove that you will find that exact temperature that you need. You'll have to move it around. So I've learned on my stove where this here will cook and where it'll keep that temperature. But do I go out and mow grass or out in the garden? No. I may do something in the kitchen. I may do something working in the kitchen or stuff. Bring my clothes, fold them in the kitchen. But I keep an eye on that. I want to make sure it's in that range what I need for processing this. And your cookbook that you got, your blue book, this is what you want right beside you. It'll tell you, there's recipes in there, and it'll tell you in there how many minutes to do for this or how many minutes to do for that. Also, your instruction books will also tell you that. And so once that timer is up, and I'll put my timer on so that it's going to ding and it's going to let me know. And once that timer is off, it goes off. I know that I've got all my time done. But I'm not done. So I turn that heat off. Will I open this valve? No, because there is so much steam and so much pressure in it. You don't touch that valve. That you don't touch. And there's different ones that have different valves. There's some that have a gauge valve on it. It might be the newer ones, it might be a little of the older ones, but there's different valves than this. What I'll do is, if I'm doing this here in the evening and my process is all done processing, I'll turn it off, I'll go to bed, but I leave this closed. Maybe in the middle of the night, maybe I'll drink some extra water and stuff, and I'll get up, and here I see that my gauge is way down hitting the little peg. I know that it's okay. And then I can lift it up, and I don't have any sizzle or anything. And so I know that I can open it. So then I can open it, and you do it again, crosswise from each. Open them up. And if this is still hot, if you've done it during the day and you're watching it and this is still hot, you want to open this here, open your thing, but don't open it towards your face, because there's hot steam in here. You want to open it away from you, and you can lift it up. And then this one, like I said, it's got a 2-rack, and you can take them out, have a towel or something. You can take your things out, put it on the counter or put it on your towel, and let it cool. You want to let them cool and sit there for 24 hours. You want everything to sit for 24 hours. So anyway, that is actually the basics of these here. Mainly, watch your pressures. Go over your instructions. Make sure you got your manual. If you question, actually you can go on YouTube and they will show you how to do this. But I do all my canning on this. Now when I was a kid, We didn't have these. When I grew up, we didn't have these. And we canned everything. I grew up in North Dakota on a farm. We raised everything, we grew everything. Whatever we ate is what we did, what we got off our garden and stuff. And we made, I was telling him, we made like borscht, and that's a vegetable soup, and green beans and all this other stuff. And I don't remember, but we must have water bathed it, and I don't remember how long my mom used to do it. She does hers for 3 hours. I'm sure maybe my mom did too, but I can't remember. But I've always done this here. I've always done the pressure cooker. And I haven't been, I learned from this that you need to watch, and you need to not leave this alone and go do something else. I had to learn the hard way because I was cleaning split pea soup off of my ceiling and in my cupboards for a long time.
I have 2 questions. You had mentioned that you put about 3 inches of water in there. Is that for anything that you're doing, or is it generally, do you have to check the book?
The book says 2 to 3 inches.
Okay.
And so I go by my finger.
Right.
Okay. So I put water in there and I go, okay, that's right. So I'll go by my finger. But, if you are serious and want to know, make sure you measure it and tell, because you don't want these to run out of water in them. And that's the reason also why once the steam comes out of this here, once the steam is coming out of it nice and good and it's steady, you want to turn that down. Otherwise, you're losing a lot of your water.
Second question. When you take it out and you're saying let it sit for 24 hours, do you need to cover it with a blanket just like you do with candy?
I just leave it on the counter. I will, put a towel on it, a towel on the counter, and stuff, and I'll just leave it there for 24 hours, and then after the 24 hours are done, that my jars have been sitting there, that these jars have been sitting, I'll take them, and I'll take the rings off, and they should be sealed. Everybody kind of knows how they can test it. If they're not sealed, they'll pop. I'll take the rings off because if you don't, then the rings get rusty, and sometimes they're hard to do. And I'll wash my jars, and then I'll take them and I'll put them down in my fruit room or in the basement, somewhere cool and in where there's no light.
Something that I've done that's helped is I put a little bit of vinegar in the water.
I read about that today.
Because otherwise, the hard water gets on your jars, and then you have to wash them with each one with vinegar. But if you put a little bit of vinegar in the water, it keeps your jars clean.
So how much vinegar would you put in one of these?
On the outside. A quarter of a cup.
A quarter of a cup for one of this size. Okay.
I do it in the water bath too. It just makes cleaning so much
So
easier.
now, is it a particular vinegar you use?
I just use the cheapest white vinegar.
White vinegar?
Yeah.
Okay. I read that. I was, because I was reading through my materials and I read that and I go, oh, I've never used vinegar, and we got hard water. And so, you gotta scrub your jars. But anyway.
To clean the rim of the jar when we're cleaning them to make sure they're gonna seal.
Yeah.
And then we
Just
just got a
clean it.
condiment jug, which I think is probably 2 ounces. And when we're done cleaning our jar, we throw out the can.
Yeah.
And that's on Kettle City water out in the country.
There you go. I like all these tips because I like to hear you guys talk, because some of us haven't done any canning in here. So anyway, so I like to do, these here are pinto beans. It's a cranberry bean, but it's a pinto bean. And I like to, every year I try to do like a full batch. I can do 16 in this. There was one year I did, because I have 2 of these, I did 16 in this and 7 in this and another one 7, all at one time on the stove. But I was watching. But I have a large stove, and so I had the room. But you can put these on the shelf, and you don't have to go to the store and get refried beans. You can just go down there and pull a can of beans off of your shelf and have tacos or something. It is so handy. And these ones here, these are a white bean, and I use these a lot for like a soup.
Do you pre-cook your beans before you put them in?
Okay, that is another thing I do. My blue ball book tells you how to do these. It'll say how to do your dry beans. And so I pre-cook them according to this, and just follow your recipes. If you don't have this here, I got those at Walmart. So go to Walmart and get these, because they have just incredible amounts of information in here. And it'll tell you, how to pre-cook your beans. And soup, this is my garden. This is all from my garden. And it's corn, it's carrots, it's peas, it's tomatoes, peppers. You can put your garden in a jar. And then in the wintertime, it's so nice to open this up with a cornbread or something. And you have, and that's in this book too. This one here, let's see. This here is a minestrone soup. It has potatoes in it and stuff. This was a recipe that I got from an old friend of mine, and I have canned these here a number of times. It's nice to have them on. And I've also done potatoes. These are potatoes. And it's like you could do mashed potatoes or anything, or you could fry these or whatever. And it's nice to have these down on your counter, down in your basement. You can just pull them out and say, okay, I'll have some potatoes and some beans, and maybe green beans or beets. And so anyway, yep.
What about the lids that are not?
Okay, you're asking about these. Now, these ones, this is not a regular jar. And now, if you ask the FDA and stuff, if you can use these, you know what they say? No.
They work.
It works. It works. And this is a salsa, and this here is like cucumber sauce, kind of a relish thing. And this was Mount Olive, and this was But if these lids have a good rubber seal, they have to have a good rubber seal with no damage on them. If they have a good rubber seal on them, you can use these jars. You can use them. Don't throw them away. Yeah, you can use these jars, and they will seal as they had before. If you will punch these, they're sealed. They will seal as much as any of the others. So I just brought some of these to show you. And another thing that is a no-no according to the FDA and stuff is I have reused. Have you ever reused your lids?
Yes.
I've reused my lids too. If you're really careful how you take your lids off, really careful how you take them off, and you inspect them and stuff and make sure that you didn't damage it, you can reuse these lids. And we all know, was it COVID during 2020? You couldn't get these hardly. It was like, and so if somebody had these lids from previous years and were careful on it, they had their own candy lids. But you got to be careful. You got to take care of them when you're doing it.
And of course, you probably don't use your most expensive goods to put in reused lids.
Yeah.
Or old mayonnaise jars either.
Yeah, and mayonnaise jars work too. It doesn't have to be a ball or a curve. Save your mayonnaise jars. Those work also. Anything else on these? The main things is your safety. You are doing this and you have little kids around, don't have the little kids sitting on the counter beside you when these things are on the stove. That's a recipe, because they might be innocently just kind of playing around, and they play around with this here. And this is hot in here. This stuff is hot. This is not a toy. So, and don't have your kids operate this. they can do it with you, so you can teach them the principles of it. But don't have them operate it with you. So do it together so they know the safety measures. So mainly the safety things is, make sure the lid is on. Well, first of all, make sure you have water in here. Your jars are filled nice and are in. Your lid is secure. And when you let your steam out, your steam is going out, shut it, watch your gauge. Don't leave and go do something else and on your computer or on Facebook or something. Don't leave it, because this is your duty right now. This is your job. Keep an eye on that. I can't stress that more, so keep an eye on that. And when it's done, just shut the stove off. Even this one I can't move. I just shut it off and leave it there. And even these, I'll just shut them off and just leave them until the gauges are all done. Any questions on these?
So some of these lids you talked about reusing them. I mean, sometimes like it'll get just like one little scratch on the white that's underneath on the other side. And I just think, can I reuse this?
Yes.
Yeah, well,
Because sometimes it'll get like a teeny bit of rust because it's been
if
scratched.
it's rusty, I wouldn't use them. Has anybody ever had a scratch on their lid and reused it? And you have had no problems? Yeah. Sometimes, if it's not terribly damaged, sometimes your lids, when you open them, I use a can opener or something, and sometimes when you open them, you might have a little bit of a... And what I do is, I will take that, and I was going to bring one, I forgot it, and I was going to show you how to do it. I will take a hard surface, and I will push that against the hard surface to make it nice and round. And it'll completely put that little indent in, and you can use it as you can before. So, anyway, put your garden in your jar. It saves you money. Because there comes a time in your garden when you can't eat everything. Have you ever had that?
What size is that pressure?
What size is this?
I'm looking at them on, they carry that kind on Layman's.
This one here is, it's called, number 941. It is a quart. 41 and a half quart. And, you can get so much done with this. And another thing,
650.
how much are they?
650.
Really?
Yeah.
How much?
That one right there at Layman's right now is 650.
649.95. Wow, they've gone up. I got this at a garage sale. Oh my. I paid $50 for it. I thought I had a real steal. And she had used it once or twice. And the reason why she sold it, it was so heavy she couldn't move it. And, it was Kathy Hagel, she couldn't move them and stuff. And so I know that now, I was thinking they were about 400, so they're 650.
The 41 quart is 650.
Yeah. And what is the, this one is a 15 and a half. So what's that?
They start at 21. Oh, 15 and a half, it's 380.
380, yeah. They've really gone up in price. Okay, so another thing I want to tell you, you can find these in garage sales. I found one this size here for Matthew, my oldest son, because my kids are into canning too. And he will just can everything he can get his hands on. And so I found one that had not hardly been used either. And I gave $50 for it. And but if you find one of these in a garage sale and stuff, inspect it, because these are toys. Inspect it. And I went down to the Washington Extension office. Yeah, I went down to the Washington Extension office, and I have some cards for her, and I talked to her, and I said, I told her we're doing a canning class, and I said, if they have some questions as far as their canner, if it is adequate and if it's in good shape, She said, bring it down and they will run your canner through a test, free. And so they will do it. So it's the county extension office. It's down there by grocery outlet. It's just down there by food center. And her name, like I said, I've got her cards here, and we can, if you want some, you can have it. But they are at the Shawila Farmers Market, the 2nd and the 4th Friday at the Farmers Market in Shawila, and in Colville it's on Saturdays. So she said they will be posting and letting people know. So if you find one of these, and it's not been used much, it's a treasure. You've got a deal. So, okay, any more questions about this? So it can be very handy, and it can really put a lot of stuff on your cupboard. Oh,
Is it the type of thing where you can only run one batch a day because they have to just cool down in there?
so you're gonna have to speak loud.
Is it the type of thing where you only can run one batch of canning a day in the pressure canner because it has to cool down?
You can do as many as you want.
So how long typically does it take before you know?
This one here obviously is going to take a lot longer because it's so big. This one doesn't. The book says 3 hours. I would say 3 hours, to give it 3 hours to cool down. It might take a little longer, but you know, you could probably have other things going. You could be getting another batch of food together, and while this here is cooling down. I've used, you know, I've done maybe a batch in the morning. I've done a batch in the morning, and then I'll do a batch in the afternoon. Sure. So you could do 2 batches. You could, you know, depending on the size of your stove. You could do two batches. Now, another thing that I was looking up, because I was wondering about those ceramic stoves, those glass top stoves and stuff, because I was wondering about the heat and stuff. When you turn it off, will it cool enough in case I'm getting into trouble? Apparently, according to the extension office, says that it does, but I'm not sure as far as this size, what the weight would be good on one of those stoves. I would think it would be good. And even this.
It can be done.
It's
not ideal, but we do it.
It can be done.
A newer version
the smaller one?
No, the double stacker, and we use it. You have to be a bit careful. We do actually slide it off the burner after it's had a little bit of cool time, right?
There you go. So you got to be careful.
It probably is scratching up the top a little bit.
Of your stove?
On YouTube, you will see pictures of broken glass tops from canners.
So obviously it can be done, but moving these, you know, like you said, it can scratch your top. That's what the book says, or that's what the extension says too. You know, it can scratch your top.
And if you have an induction cooktop, you have to have a canner that's got a base on it that will react with the induction.
Is that what you have as an induction?
No, ours
is the other one.
A little sun lamp on it, basically.
So anyway, they can be a good tool. It's a learning process. Like I said, I didn't grow up using these, and my mom had never used them, and so I learned after this one, after I blew the top off, that you know, you can use these, but you got to watch. And as far as the new pressure, we were talking about it, the Instant Pot. I'm not sure. I don't think it's
Small stuff.
the small stuff. She was saying that you can on it, but I have not gone there. I don't know anything.
They have since recanted on that. At sea level, they're probably okay. But even here in town, they're pretty marginal if you're doing a low acid food feed and you follow USDA guidelines. Because they only get up to like 11 pounds, I think. Some of them don't get to that. And right here in town, if it's accurate, 11 pounds is.
So it's not ideal.
Yeah, you're going to be in a rebel canner. If you do it, you'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
But also the cool down, you may want to go a little longer because the time it comes up to temperature is shorter, and the cool down time is a little short as well. And that part, that's figured into the USDA guidelines. So there's a
You know,
time down.
we have the propane one, but anyway, we had talked about cleaning out my cupboards and stuff, and what can I get rid of and stuff, and we said, well, maybe we can get rid of this. We never use it. We have an Instant Pot. And I go, well, what if our electricity goes out? What if we don't have electricity? I can use this on a stove. I can use this on a wood
That's a
stove.
small pressure can,
And so-
that isn't the electric instant.
Anyway, I go, I think I'm gonna keep this. I never got rid of it. Okay, so I wanna go over, and they're probably gonna go over some drying. Are you gonna go over drying on top of the stove? Okay.
We're not, well, you can do it in regards.
Okay, because I know you can dry on top of wood stove, or you can dry in the sun drying. I've never done that before, but I know that's possible. This is an Excalibur food dehydrator. We use it a lot. I like it. We do our grapes. We make all our own raisins and stuff, and they're so much better than store-bought raisins. You make your own raisins. I do my own onions, and you can make your own onion powder. I do my own garlic. You can make your own garlic powder. And then you can also do, you know, pears and apples, or any of the other veggies that you got in here. There's a lot of different dehydrators out there. So what I would suggest is find one that has some good reviews. Read the reviews on them. Find the ones that have the good reviews that people say they've had success on them, and go with that, because that sometimes is your best resource. But we have been pleased with this. We use this once it comes raisin season, this thing is going all the time. But again, you have to have electricity with this. So I need to learn how to do it. I'm going to turn the time over to Lena. She's going to talk to us about water bathing. Is there any other questions about this part?
We have a round one, and got some, I forgot what it was. That air comes in the bottom, up around, and then out the top. But on this particular food, we found weevils in it. after we
Weevils?
dried.
Really?
I just wonder if that
Oh,
was,
is that when after it was in the jars?
huh?
After it was dried? After you dehydrated it?
Well, yeah,
Okay. So what I do is I have a vacuum seal. I have a vacuum sealer. And so we'll put the raisins or the other in here, and I will vacuum seal it. So if you vacuum seal it, then nothing will get in. And does that answer why the weevils?
we put them in plastic bags,
Yeah.
and I don't know, can the weevil, can the
Get in it?
female penetrate the plastic?
I'm not sure. I would think that the plastic bags would not be quite as secure. I don't know. What are your thoughts? I've never done it in plastic bags and had weevil problems.
Well, wait a minute, I think we had them in jars too. Yeah, there was something in jars that had weevils in it. I think we put them directly from the dehydrator to the jar. And, yeah, it's been a few years, but it didn't have weevils in it.
I've never had that happen.
Sometimes you can get pests in it if it's not dry enough.
If it's not dry enough.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know what
maybe it
she
wasn't-
said.
That wasn't it.
No, he said you could.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
what
don't
she
know. Another thing, what I do is when I make my do my jars, I date them. I date all my stuff when I did it like 21. Here's a 19. And people will say, oh, you can't eat that, that's 19. This is good. It doesn't matter. You know, don't let somebody say that if it's there longer than a year that you can't eat it, that it's no good. That's not true. This is as good as these was. And this was onions, yellow onions, 2020. These are I could open these up and these would be as good as they were when you know. So, I like to date mine. I will wash my stuff and I will rotate it. I like to rotate, and that's an important thing, is rotate your food. You know, put the new stuff in the bag and bring everything forward. And that will get the older stuff gone. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so we're ready for you. Yeah. If you have questions, you can come up to me later. I will stand up here and you can talk to me. Okay.
Thank you.